to BigCountryPreps.com. I'm Evan Wren, and this is the Countdown to Two-A-Days series, our daily look at an area football team and the key questions we'll be answering about that team in our August 21st preseason preview here at Big Country Preps. I'm with my partner, Dan Youngblood, who is joining us via Zoom out of Houston, Texas this time. He's been putting on some miles lately. And Dan, today we're going to be talking about the Stamford Bulldogs.
Yeah, we just talked about Holly yesterday, and this is probably their primary challenger this year in their district. A Stanford team that, on paper, looks absolutely loaded with 24 lettermen back from last year's 9-2 team, just an enormous number for a 2A school. Among those are 8 offensive and 7 defensive starters, so a lot of experience back on both sides of the football this year for the Bulldogs. And like I said, some very high expectations out of that program this year. It's going to be really fun to see how that plays out. Obviously, they will have some questions to answer, and we'll get to a few of those here in a few minutes. But yeah, Coach Wayne Hutchinson has to like the team he's putting on the field this year.
Absolutely. Before we jump into this week's show, we want to remind you YouTubers to please hit the subscribe button and also hit that little bell so you get notifications each and every time that Big Country Preps comes up with a new video. Also, we'd like to thank a couple of our sponsors, beginning with For the Love of the Game Broadcasting and our old friend Terry Slavens, owner of KLAX 93.5 FM out of Brackenridge, 97.7 FM KATX out of Eastland, Classic Country AM 1330 out of Graham, 94.7 FM KWKQ out of Graham, KROO 1430 AM out of Breck, and KWBY 98.5 FM out of Ranger. That is For the Love of the Game Broadcasting. Also, Rob Durham, sales consultant at Bear Chevrolet Buick Cadillac up in Breckenridge. If you're in the market for a vehicle, give Rob a shot at 254-559-2266. He's one of the nicest guys you'll ever want to meet. That is Rob Durham up at Bear Chevrolet Buick Cadillac in Breckenridge.
And with that, let's go ahead and jump in and talk about these Stanford Bulldogs and some of the questions that they will be facing this year on the football field. And I think one of the biggest is a positive. It's that this is a program that's been on the younger side in recent years. They've had a lot of young kids playing in key roles for them the last couple of years in particular. This year they've got more experience. This is kind of a senior-led team with some kids who have been a big part of what they've done the last 2-3 years. And I'm eager to see how that experience kind of manifests itself, what that turns into, the impact of that experience this year, because they had a really nice season last year with a lot of youth. So I'm excited to see kind of what they can do with that experience this year. I think it's got to be a huge positive for them.
Last year they left a little bit on the table, and I think they know they left just a little bit on the table. They had Holly beat on their home field. They also had a competitive game with Stratford. And, when you get that close to knocking off teams of that caliber, it makes you hungry. And I'd like to know how hungry that has made Stanford going into this season, knowing that they were that close to taking a massive step forward.
Yeah, and that kind of leads me into the last question I have. This is a program, a Stanford program that has had a ton of success over the years. Coach Wayne Hutchinson being a big part of that in his first tenure there. And I'm just eager to see, is this the year that Stanford gets back into that district championship mix? It's been since 2017 that the Bulldogs won a district title, and it's kind of been those Holly Bearcats that have kind of run that district in recent years. I'm eager to see if this is the year that the Bulldogs kind of take back control, wrestle back control from Holly, and that I think is going to be one of the bigger storylines in the area this year. That's going to be a big district race, in my opinion.
All right, and with that, we're going to take a quick look at Stanford's schedule for 2024. Let's have a look at the non-district portion first. August the 30th, we've got a date with Albany at home. And that's a big one. We've got a road date at De Leon, and that's another big game for De Leon. Wow, in non-district. We have Lubbock Christian, which is always a tough matchup against that private school. That's tough. Then they've got a home date with Roscoe. Both Lubbock Christian and Roscoe are at home, by the way. And then at Henrietta, that's an interesting matchup against a bigger school. That's on the road on September the 27th, and then a home date or an open date rather prior to jumping in to district. That open date is on October the 4th.
So a good challenging non-district schedule is followed by that road date, or that open date rather, and then they open district with a big one against Cisco at home on October 11th. They follow that with a trip to Anson on the 18th of October before hosting Abilene TLCA on October 25th. And then they round out their district schedule at Olney on November 1st and with a huge home game against Hawley on November 8th. So just a really interesting schedule, I think, that's the bookended by two huge matchups, Cisco in that opener, Hawley on in the finale. Should be a really fun district schedule.
A no-brainer is the game of the year. We like to pick out a game of the year for each team. I think this one's just too easy to pick.
Yeah, I mean, you look at that district finale against Holly, just a like I said earlier, just a massive football game, and I think one of the bigger storylines in the area this year. That's going to be a really fun district race between those two schools that I think both come into this season with huge expectations, with championship aspirations. Uh, I've got that one circled on my calendar. That's going to be a huge matchup.
All right, and with that, it's about time to wrap up this edition of the Countdown to Two-A-Day series, the Stamford Bulldogs. But before we do that, we want to remind you that on August 21st, that's the big day here at Big Country Preps. That's when we release our annual preseason football preview, which is the most comprehensive look at high school football in the Big Country and surrounding area of any media source that you're going to find. We'll have a team preview for all of our base 45 football teams. We'll have stats, standings, photos, videos, opinion pieces, player features, you name it, we're going to have it. Nobody's going to have more. And as Dan will tell you, it's about to change a little bit more. We're actually increasing what we're covering this year.
Yes, so we were adding to the Big Country Preps coverage area Mineral Wells, Glen Rose, Graham, Toller, and Miles. So our base 40 11-man schools is growing to 45 this year. We are super excited to add those schools to the mix. We hope you're excited to follow our coverage of those schools throughout the school year. In the meantime, we appreciate you joining us for this episode of our Countdown to Two Days series, and we hope you come back tomorrow when we will be featuring the Ballinger Bearcats here at BigCountryPreps.com.